Hello and welcome to another episode of the Popcorn Conspiracy. I'm Dave G and joining me now is my co-host.
Hello everybody, I'm Kyle.
And tonight we're taking a look at a brand new, I guess you would call it, thriller that's still around in cinemas at the moment. It's called Crisis, and I'm guessing this is a film that the studios were very, very nervous about. First of all, because the film has a central character played by Armie Hammer, who of course has got himself into a little bit of Me Too trouble just recently. And it also has a central character called Dr. Tyrone Brower, played by Gary Oldman, that is talking about how medical companies can sometimes bring out a drug that they know doesn't work properly into the community. That must have made the studios very, very nervous, considering what's going on at the moment with the COVID vaccinations. But for those who don't know anything about Crisis, it's directed by Nicholas Jarecki, also written by him as well, and it basically tells three different stories. In one story, you've got Jake Kelly, played by Armie Hammer, who is a federal agent who has pretty much got to the point where he can shut down a major drug trafficking syndicate coming from Canada into America. Suddenly he has a brand new boss played by Michelle Rodriguez that looks like she could put a little bit of a dampener on things and then tries to rush things along. At the same time, you've also got Claire Raymond, played by Evangeline Lilly. She herself is a recovering drug addict, and suddenly she finds herself plunged into this world of drug dealers after the tragic death of her son. At the same time, you've got Dr. Tyrone Brower, who I already mentioned, played by Gary Oldman, who is a scientist who quite often tests medications before they get released and then hands back his findings to a drug company. Now, he has a drug company approach him about testing a drug for them, and he finds that it fails his tests. And he's kind of alarmed at how the pharmaceutical company reacts when he goes back to them and gives them those results. Now, mate, this is a pretty convoluted film. So what did you think when you were watching Crisis?
I actually really liked it. I think that Nicholas Jarecki has done a really fine job with this. It reminded me a lot of Steven Soderbergh's movie Traffic.
Yeah.
In dealing with the drug trade through multiple characters and multiple perspectives, as like this character's at this point and this character's at this point of the drug deal. Like, I really thought that was interesting, and I really liked each of the three character storylines, and I thought that each of them would have been easily enough meat to make up their own feature film. And I think that's actually maybe a little bit of a problem with the movie, is that it definitely felt like how they went about fitting these three separate storylines into the one movie kind of hurt each of them, with how rushed and at sometimes almost cartoony they came off, because of how much they've got to rush through certain scenes that should be written a bit better, or should take a bit longer to get to the point. And instead, because we've got these three giant, big storylines crammed all into the one, 2-hour film, it just feels very, very rushed. What did you think of it, David?
Yeah, I felt that as well. I've been waiting for a while to see a new Nicholas Jarecki film, because I absolutely loved the last film that he did, Arbitrage, with Michael Douglas. For those that have been reading my reviews for a few years, you'll know that back in 2012, that movie made my top 10 list of that year. It was an absolutely fantastic kind of business espionage thriller. And so I'm kind of surprised that it's taken 9 years for his next film to come out. It really, really surprises me that someone that gifted hasn't had another movie in between that time period. And I'm like you, I love Traffic. I love both the miniseries and the movie. But I just felt with this film that they tried to almost do too much. I don't mind a film where three stories come together, but this just felt like there was overkill at times. Like, you already had the story around Evangeline Lilly being a former addict. You had the story about her not knowing whether or not her son was an addict. But then, just to, like, it felt like just to really throw it in your face, suddenly they introduced that Jake's sister, Emmy, played by Lily Rose Depp, is also a drug addict. And that's why he's in that world. Like, I really think that you didn't need that. Like, there's a whole scene in there where, like, she's off the wagon big time, and he goes to try and help out and, like, talks to his mum and stuff, and it's like, you don't really need that. Like, you already know that he's a driven cop that wants to shut down these cartels. I don't think he needed a personal reason for it, or if he did, have it as a throwaway line, like, have Michelle Rodriguez's character Garrett say to him, like, why does this mean so much to you? I have a sister who's a drug addict. That's all it needed. You didn't need those scenes. And it felt like this film becomes bloated because of that, whereas you probably could have told this story in like 100 minutes if you didn't have all those little side things that were shoved in there, kind of thing. Like, it even felt like at times that Claire's, I mean, I'm still not sure if it was best friend or sister, it almost felt that she was in too many scenes as well. Like, it just felt like it kept on almost like dragging on because they tried to push too much in there.
Yeah, like, I did like the basis of each story, like the way that you've got a mother dealing with the apparent overdose of her child and finding out there was more behind it. You've got the undercover cop trying to bring down the fentanyl smuggling organization, and the university professor receives funding for giving safety tests on these things. Like, it was interesting. I like the three perspectives because it's kind of like, it's almost like the mother's dealing with the aftermath of the drug trade, the cop is trying to stop the illegal drug trade, and the professor is right at the start where it all begins. Like, his actions, or if he doesn't stop what he sees happening, basically it's what leads to these crime rings. It's what leads to this addiction and this issue. Like, I like that, and I think that the best storyline in the film would be the Gary Oldman story. Like, for me, that was the most interesting story of the entire movie. The one that, like, it definitely could have seen built in its own movie. Something similar to maybe last year's Dark Waters with Mark Ruffalo.
Yeah.
Sadly, like, his third of the movie is exactly like you say, man. He has like a third slice of the movie, and it's dedicated not just to his storyline, but to his family and to his friends, and also to the big pharma company that he works with and their relationship with their stockholders, and this new drug that they're promising is going to make their company a buttload of money. Like, that story, more than others, feels like it doesn't have any room to breathe. There's too many characters, there's too many things going on in there for that just one little slice of this movie. Like, which leads to every part of it feeling like it's just some big, like it's a comic book with no depth to the characters or the conversations. Like, Greg Kinnear's character, like, the characters that are wrong, they're almost hilariously one-dimensional. Like, when Gary Oldman's character tries to tell people that, hey, this drug is potentially unsafe, they respond with something basically, who cares, just sign the paper, we need the money. Or something like equally basic, because the film doesn't have the time to show how this conversation playing out in a even semi-believable way. Just everything is, there's so many characters, there's so much stuff going on, it just, they can't have it play out in any kind of decent fashion.
Yeah, I agree, and that's a shame, because that was Jarecki's trump card, I thought, with Arbitrage. That was the most powerful part of that movie. It was a business espionage story. Yeah, there was a story about a character having an affair kind of thing, and that coming back to bite him as well. But it's that style of writing that made me like that film. And I think having the whole storyline revolving around Tyrene Brower, you could have made that a film on its own, and it would have worked brilliantly well, because for a majority of people, we don't know what happens with pharmaceutical companies. Like, I kept on thinking of that film a few years ago that came out called Love and Other Drugs. And that film centers around the fact that there are pharmaceutical companies, salespeople that go to doctors and basically say, if you can get 100 people onto our pain medication, we will give you a free trip to Switzerland. People didn't know that that happened. And I know so many people now who are skeptical about getting advice from doctors about medication because of that film, because it got that really powerful point out there. And I felt like they could have done the same thing with the Gary Oldman story in this, made it a movie on its own and open up that to the world, so that the world suddenly realizes, holy crap, like they do release medication onto the market that has failed tests. And especially now that we're seeing it with some of the vaccinations, like we can't even say anymore that, oh, that's only happening overseas, because as we've seen with one of the COVID vaccinations here in Australia, they said, oh, it passed all the tests and it's fine to get given to people. And then when people started to get sick, they suddenly said, oh, no, if you're aged under 50, you shouldn't have this medication. And it's like, oops, bang, exactly what we saw in this movie is what's happened. So, yeah, I almost...
being rushed through. It didn't have the proper tests.
Yeah, I almost felt like they could have made this 2 movies and it would have worked. Like, one about the Gary Oldman character and the other one about Armie Hammer and Evangeline Lilly's characters' paths crossing, and it still would have worked well. But having said that, I did enjoy this film. I'm not saying that I didn't enjoy this movie. I just felt at times it was kind of over-bloated by trying to fit too much in.
Yeah, like, it's a pity, because, Gary Oldman and all the other actors within their scenes are great, but it just felt so rushed. Like, Kid Cody, who recently was in Bill and Ted Face the Music, he plays the face of the fat body that Browser is whistleblowing to.
Yeah.
And he only has, like, 3 short scenes, I think, in the entire movie. And his final scene is it's played up like he's saying him saying goodbye really means something. But there are background extras in other storylines who have more screen time than he does. I think the story that best suits this pacing was the Armie Hammer storyline. Like, all of the film's, like, intense moments and action scenes are kind of dedicated to his storyline. And also, as you say, with Michelle Rodriguez kind of, like, pushing him along, it's kind of a plot point that's made that he only has 2 weeks to... I think it's 2 weeks to bring about an end to this operation, not the months that he realistically needs.
Yeah.
So it suits well that his entire segment of the film feels like such a rush, because for his character, that's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
And that said, again, Lily Rose Depp's character playing this drug-addicted sister, she kind of falls to the wayside because of that. Like, it kind of fits with that the man is so focused on his deep undercover second life that he doesn't have time for those closest to him who need the help. But it still... It does feel like maybe you didn't really need that side character. It just feels like another character that is kind of, she's only in like a couple of scenes, and it doesn't, like, certain things don't really hit you as hard as they should, because we haven't really grown to care that much about this character that's barely in the movie.
Yeah, and I felt that, like, that some of the peripheral characters in this needed more time than the ones that actually did. Like, I would have liked to have seen Michelle Rodriguez's character given some more screen time. Like, almost made her so that she was like a partner for Armie Hammer. And likewise, you've got some great actors in there playing roles that, like, are quite small. Like, Greg Kinnear is in there in a really small kind of role as one of Gary Oldman's friends. Luke Evans is the same. Like, Luke Evans kind of, like, pops up out of nowhere. And again, it's kind of a character that you think you don't really kind of need in there, because he is pretty much playing the same role as Veronica Ferrez's character, who's the lead doctor at the pharmaceutical company, and you kind of think, well, couldn't that role have been turned into like one kind of role? And then you've even got like Mia Kirshner popping up there in like a really small role as well. Like these are people...
I actually forgot that she was in it because she's in it so little.
Yeah, and these are actors and actresses that in other movies would have been given more screen time. So, and like I did hear this, but I didn't hear it officially, so I almost don't feel like saying it on the show, but I'll say it because it does explain a fair bit. I was actually told that apparently this was originally going to be a miniseries, like the Traffic miniseries, and then it got condensed down into a movie, and that would actually make a lot of sense if there was a lot of stuff out there, because it would explain why you've got people of the ilk of like Greg Kinnear and Luke Evans and Mia Kirshner and people like that playing roles that hardly are in it. Like I don't get why Michelle Rodriguez would say yes to doing a movie like this where she's only in like 5 or 6 scenes tops, when like she's one of the highest paid stars out there at the moment with the Fast and Furious franchise. It doesn't feel right, and I guess if there is a whole bunch more footage out there to make a mini-series, it would explain why those characters are not as used as much, because there was supposed to be more storyline for them, but it's been condensed into a film.
Yeah, maybe it's like a 2.5 hour or longer movie. I think that the characters that are in it would have been given a little bit more room to breathe. I think it would have better suited either that runtime or, as you say, a miniseries. It definitely would have fit as a miniseries. Like, it's pretty, because like, yeah, the acting I thought was top notch throughout. Like, Evangeline Lilly was amazing in it as this, like, the mother dealing with the grief of losing a child, and more or less like her only reason for living, and because of that becoming laser focused on investigating like what happened to him and getting revenge for what happened to him.
Yeah.
Like I did think that her storyline as it ended maybe felt a little bit too much like it had a happy ending.
Yeah.
Like the movie, like it seemed to want to show like the futility of the fight against the drug trade. But at the same time, didn't seem comfortable having a downer ending for any of them. Any of the storylines going on. Like, I mean, it's based on real problems, but it's heavily fictionalized otherwise. So I think that, like, showing somewhat downer ending for every storyline would have been maybe a bit more fitting summary of the how bad the situation is with the fentanyl drug trade that they're actually that the film is examining.
Definitely, yeah, I definitely agree, and I think it's a world that we would have enjoyed being in longer as well. Like, if not an extra long movie, definitely a miniseries or something like that, I think would have definitely worked. I guess having said that, though, what are you going to give this one out of 5?
I'm going to give this 3.5 out of 5. I did, like you, I did really enjoy it. I just think that just a bit more of a runtime, I think would have suited the movie a lot better. It's just, especially with how the Gary Oldman story, the one that I think I would have been most interested in seeing as its own movie, just seeing how condensed everything was in that, and just how, especially Greg Kinnear's character, just how he kind of cartoonish he came off because of that. I think it's just a real shame of the potential that this movie had. So 3.5 out of 5 from me.
Yeah, I'm giving it 3 out of 5. I really did enjoy some of the performances in this, and I enjoyed the story as well, but I just felt like they tried to push a little bit too much in there at times. So, I'm going to have to give it a 3 out of 5 just because I think that they did try to do just that little bit too much. And that's it for this episode of The Popcorn Conspiracy. Kyle gave Crisis 3.5 out of 5. I gave it 3 out of 5. Go and check it out. See what you think. If anything else, you'll see some great performances and you'll learn a thing or two about the pharmaceutical company. But that's it for this episode of The Popcorn Conspiracy. I've been Dave G.
And I've been Kyle.
And we'll be back very, very soon with another episode of The Popcorn Conspiracy.